Welcome to Office 2010 Video Project 26. Hey, we're still talking about Excel. In our last video, we talked about cell references. We can go back and remind ourselves we did a bunch of amazing things. And because we knew how to use mixed cell references, for example here, we were allowed to create a bunch of formulas all at the same time, avoiding having to create individual formulas and copy them down. Again, mixed cell references. Oh, what a time saver when it comes to creating formulas. Now, in this video, we want to talk about assumption tables or formula inputs and how to orientate them. Simple example. Here's our labels: FICA, Medicare, federal withholdings. We need to have a formula to calculate a tax based on gross pay. And the question is, do we use these formula inputs or these ones? These ones are orientated horizontally. These ones are vertically. And I will try to trick you on the test. On the test, I'll give you a template like this, and I'll give you two assumption tables, and I'll say, pick the right one. There's actually one other major point we'll learn in this video. We'll learn about ranges over in these formulas over here. So two things: how to set up assumption tables or formula inputs, and when to use a range, a cell range, instead of individual cells. All right, so here it is. What's the answer? We need to calculate 3 different taxes. Do we use this little table here, or do we use this one? Well, let's go back and remind ourselves. We already kind of talked about this. Go back to our income statement sheet. Remember what we said here? F2 to put this in edit mode. We says, oh, if the formula inputs are column headers and row headers, notice this table right here could be right here, expense 1 to 5. We just put them down here. We literally could have put these right here, and these would have been row headers. Anytime you have that situation, column headers, row headers, no problem. You can use mixed cell references. Now, really what this means is, see these right here? These are the labels in the table. When we look down here, the labels and the numbers we're using in our formulas, they're orientated up and down here. So vertical is parallel to vertical, and that is the trick. Let's go back over here. And our textbook, you're going to have in chapter 3. Actually, I don't think I assigned that homework problem this time. But in the past, I've assigned homework problems where the author sets up the table with labels like this. In essence, these are column headers, right? But they give you assumptions like this. Now, notice this is not parallel to this. Anytime you get not parallel, forget it. That noise means wrong answer. Anytime you have the labels, which means these are going to be columns of tax calculations, and the labels and the associated formula inputs, anytime they're parallel, ding, 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 right answer. All right, so that's the whole trick. Just hold your hands up parallel. If the assumption table and the labels for the formulas in the table, if they're not parallel, forget it. You're going to have to reorientate them. So if you get it like this, you're going to have to reorientate it like this to enable yourself to use mixed cell references. Now, in some situations out in the working world, they give you a table like this, and your boss says, under no circumstances do you change this orientation. Well, no problem. I'm just going to have to create 3 individual formulas, copy each one down. All right, let's see how this works. I'm actually going to blow this up. The first part of this table, we have some names, sales, commissions, our base salary, and then right here, we're just adding. So our gross pay is what we use to calculate each tax deduction. Now, this is federal holdings here is going to be a simplified version. You'd have to do something much more complex, given that individual employees would have to have different federal withholdings. But for our example here, absolutely fine to look at this simplified example. All right, I'm going to highlight this just like we did in our last couple of videos. Highlight a range, and I'm going to go to View, Zoom to Selection, or Alt-WG. All right, let's do our base formula just like we did in the last few videos. I'm going to say, oh, gross pay. Now that times, and this is FICA. Do I pick this one or this one? I pick this one, parallel, parallel. Now we have to ask our two questions of each cell reference to figure out what sort of mixed cell reference. Now I'm going to start with this one first here. And we got to ask our two questions, and the two questions are based on the fact that there are two directions across the columns and across the rows when we copy our formula. All right, so I'm going to say when I go this direction from FICA to Medicare deduction and then to federal withholdings, are each one of these formulas based on gross pay? Yeah, they are. So we need to lock. So this is for Amy, right? So there's Amy. When we go this way, we got to use Amy's 4,500. So how do we lock it when we go this way? Well, I'm copying it this way, and if I need it locked, where my cursor is going across what? Numbers or letters? Letters. So I'm going to hit the F4 key. My cursor's touching the cell reference 1, 2, 3 times. Now that's the first question. Now when we go down, am I going to lock it on Amy's, or when I get to the next employee, should I be looking at the next employee's gross pay? I should be looking at the next employee's gross pay, which means that's a relative cell reference. So I'm done there. No $sign in front of the row reference. Now I go to this one. Same two questions about this cell reference. All right, when I copy this way from FICA to Medicare, do I want the green box down here to go from FICA to Medicare? You betcha. So the column reference is not locked. Now what about when I go down? Do I want that green box to move down each time I copy the formula down one? Do I want the green box to move down one? No, I don't. I need it locked. So I need to go copy in this direction. So I need the $sign in front of the row reference. I'm going to hit the F4 twice. All right, that formula will work. Control Enter. Drag it down. And then drag it over just to federal withholdings. Now I'm going to click over here. I'm going to click right here and hit the F2 key. Absolutely perfect. Look at that. The blue box is right there on the gross pay, and it's got the right federal withholdings. Now, let's go over, and we need to add up total deductions. The second topic we're going to cover in this video is when to use a range in a function and when to use plus, plus, plus. Now, let's just do a formula here. This is going to be a bad formula, but we have to do one bad and one good, and then we're going to change our setup and see why the bad formula is not good. So here's what a lot of spreadsheets, you go out there in the working world and you see, oh, we need to add these, so I'm going to go this plus this plus this. OK, so enter. It gets us the right answer. And what a lot of people say is, yeah, but it gets me the right answer. So why should I change? Well, here's a faster formula. Two reasons that this next formula will be better. It's faster, and you'll see later that it doesn't run into as many problems. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut for AutoSum, Alt equals. Now, it guessed wrong, so I'm going to redirect it with my dancing ants, my cursor and dancing ants. All right. These are relative cell references, so when I copy down, the dancing ants will move down perfectly. Total deductions for each employee as I go down. Control Enter puts the formula in the cell, keeps the cell selected. I'm going to point to my fill handle and click and drag. Go to the last cell and hit F2. It's looking good. Now, net pay. Now, I already see a problem here. See how there are no decimals showing? That's got to be a problem. I mean, we're talking dollars and cents here. So I'm actually going to go, I scrolled over using my vertical scroll bar. I'm going to highlight in this cell, drag down, drag over. I'm using my selection cursor, not my fill handle and angry rabbit. All right, and now I'm going to increase the decimals. Now, you know, in the last video, I put a button here so I didn't have to go back to home. So now I can just go boop, boop. All right, now net pay. Well, that's gross minus total deductions. So I'm going to say equals gross minus total deductions. Control Enter. I can actually double click and send this down. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. I did not want it to go all the way down there. I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to drag. I love Control Z. I don't know what I'd do without Control Z. I make at least 100 mistakes every day when I'm using Excel and Word. Control Z is my best friend. All right, now I'm going to go look at the formula is over here. I'm going to hit the F2 key. Looks like it's sum the 5 above me. So I'm actually going to copy it all the way over. Escape, like this. Click in the last one, hit F2. All right, so now, couple things here. Let's click in this cell, F2. OK, so we did our mixed cell references. We copied it all the way there. Here we made a mistake, an inefficient formula, not only from a time formula creation standpoint in terms of it takes us too long, but we'll see in just a moment an error with that. Here we did sum. Now, we have this payroll tax table. And imagine your boss comes in and says, hey, look, we have, you forgot a deduction. Where's the pension deduction? You know, we take out 2% from each employee's paycheck. And so the boss says, hey, listen, take the next couple hours and build a new template. And of course, you being good at Excel, kind of turn over and look over your shoulder at the boss, and you say, you mean like this, boss? And you're referring to the fact that you could very quickly add this in. Your boss has no idea about all the Excel tricks. So you point to this column, and you right-click Insert. Immediately you come down here and you say, and you turn back to the boss. You said pension, right? And so you type pension, enter, and then you say it was 2%. Right? And your boss says 2%. Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to type. Notice it's pre-formatted. Actually, what happened there is when you inserted this column, you pulled all the format over like this. So it's all formatted perfectly, 2%. And then you very quickly highlight this whole column. And you point to your fill handle. And you, with your angry rabbit, you click and drag over. And then you say, you mean like that, boss? And your boss's jaw just drops open. She can't believe that everything updated perfectly. Now, let's look at why it updated perfectly. The first thing is, right here, when we copied this over, I'm going to Control Z. Notice that that formula is already set up perfect. We just inserted a new column. This green box is going to move over to that 2%. The gross pay is already locked, so when we copy it over this way, it works. The sum function, I'm going to hit Escape, F2. The sum function, when we copy it over, it's going to that blue box is going to move over perfectly. And look up here. If I hit F2, that was also a formula looking down to the label in the assumption table. Because not only did we have it parallel, but we set it up in perfect right under the correct column as if they were column headers. Everything worked fine. So watch this. 3 different formulas. 1, 2, and 3. I can copy 3 different formulas over, and boom. Let's just look here. F2. Oh, look at that. Absolutely working perfectly. We already can see that that one's looking there. This one too, F2. We could not have done this if we didn't know about A, mixed cell references, and B, how to set up your assumption table with your formula inputs. Now, one final thing. Over here, let's go look here. F2, this is our bad formula. Notice structural updates like inserting columns are not accommodated with formulas like this when you do individual cells. Escape. But what about here? F2. Perfectly accommodating. When we inserted that column, because we used arrange, there's a colon there. It says F4 to whatever the last one was. So if you insert anything in between, totally updates. So to finish this, we just want to remove this. We only did this for our purposes to see that this is inefficient because it takes too long to type out, and it doesn't accommodate structural updates. So I'm going to click here and drag this up. And now you can see all of these formulas update, right? So this one was looking at gross plus the total deductions. Now, I have this example in this class I'm teaching because this literally happened to me on my first day of work. Broderick Consulting, my first day at a tax job many years ago. And I already told one story about my first day at the tax job when I did basic page setup within 2 hours of my first day, and I impressed the boss. Something similar to this happened. My boss came in and says, look, that template you're using from the last person that worked here, it's no good. Can you update it? And I had already updated it, and I looked over and at her and I said, you mean like this, boss? And within 10 seconds, I had manipulated the changed structural elements of the table, and it all updated. And she was just amazed. So learning these Excel tricks, these efficient formula creation tricks that we're learning, it's not just going to make your life easier, but maybe it'll help you get promoted also. Now, we want to look at one more example. I'm going to click over here on Formula Inputs. Again, this is just like a test problem. I'm going to give you some sort of table that requires mixed cell references, and I'm going to give you 2 assumption tables. So immediately, we've done this a number of times in this class already. You should immediately be looking here. Well, you say, OK, the revenues are going to be column headers. So there's some formula in here that's going to use those revenues. And then over here, we have some wage expenses. And I have these labels and these. Which one do I use? Ding, 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 ding. These are vertical. These are vertical. These are the ones you use. All right? And in your jobs or your homework or whatever, or when you're building your own templates, just think parallel. Don't do it this way. I mean, don't set it up perpendicular where one is horizontal and one is vertical. As soon as you have that, it's impossible. You can't use mixed cell references here. All right. Let's highlight this, and I'm going to do our little trick, Alt-WG. All right, our formula, we've done this budget type projected net income statement. This is the 3rd time we've done a problem like this. So we know that we estimate our expenses with revenues times the percentages that are created from past data, right? So the accountants and the accountant departments figure out what these are. All right, our 2 questions. I'm going to start with B14. When I copy this way, do I want it to move relatively so that the green box moves too, or locked? I want it locked. I'm going cross columns, so I'm going to hit F4 3 times. When I go down from wage expense to vehicle expense, do I need the green box to move from 19.75 to 12? You betcha. Done with that one. 2 questions. I go to the next cell reference. Same 2 questions. When I move this way, do I want the blue box to move to the associated column header, which is our revenue? Yes, I do. I want relative going across the columns. I'm copying across the columns. When I go down, sure enough, I need it locked on the column header. So where do I put this? Well, it's a column header, and I want it locked. But I don't want to think of column header. I want to say locked, and I'm moving this direction across the numbers. So I need that 3 to be locked on this row 3. So I'm putting the $ in front of that 3. This way relative, this way locked. All right, that formula will work. Control Enter. Drag it down and drag it over. Don't forget this trick. When I'm teaching, I tend to do the 2-step process. When I'm doing it myself, remember I showed you this trick earlier. If you highlight all the cells in advance and build your formula, in the active cell. As soon as you hit Control Enter, it's whatever you put here is populating into all the cells. Go to the last one, the furthest diagonal one away. F2. Beautiful. Look at that. All right, now total. Alt equals. Looks like it got it right. Control Enter. I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to click here. Alt equals. Incorrect. When you use, we saw this a couple times with the sum function and once with the average function in our video project 18. Not right. You always have to do 2-step process when you're using a function, and it's trying to be polite, right? So it's highlighted. I just redirect it. Control Enter, drag it over. Now I'm going to come here, equals revenue minus that. Oh, it's a bunch above minus the one directly above. Relative cell references all the way across. Click on the last one, F2. Absolutely beautiful. All right, now that video right there, there's a homework problem. You should definitely do that. And when you do the homework problems in the textbook, not this week or next week, these 2 weeks we're studying just the excelisfun book and doing the video projects and an occasional homework problems here. But when you get to the textbook and 3 weeks out in our schedule, be sure and practice, even though the textbook will suggest that you do the formula a certain way with only relative and absolute. You're smarter than that by now. So you use mixed cell references, and then you can complete your homework more quickly. All right, we'll see you next video. Next video, we're going to start talking about formatting. All right, see you next video.